Hi, good afternoon, class. My name is Jenny Garcia, and along with my group members, Theophilus Franklin and Rana Nicholas, we'll be presenting on Chapter 6. Oh, just a second, sir. Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Me and my group members will be presenting on the topic on the chapter Leading with Integrity and Moral Purpose. Next slide.
Let's start off with a scenario. You're the captain of a ship that just hit an iceberg. You have 25 passengers who are all crowded into a single lifeboat that's only meant to carry 15. If you allow all 25 to remain in the boat, you avoid having to sentence some to death, but you know that they will all surely die out at sea alone. Or instead, you could choose 15 passengers and let the other down, arguing that you're sacrificing their life for the lives of the put the life of a family member over that of a stranger. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a moral leadership dilemma. Situations like these beg the question of how we determine what is morally right or wrong. Nowadays, morality is synonymous with leadership, but how do we and should we judge a leader based off of their moral values? Ethics and morals, as defined by Santa Clara University, are standards for how we ought to act. They are not religion, feelings, cultural norms, nor are they law, because all of these factors can deviate from what is right, as seen by the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany. These factors do, however, heavily influence how we make our decisions and how others judge us on those decisions. For example, foot binding, though deemed unacceptable in Western culture, was common practice in China and a measurement of feminine beauty. Polygamy is widely accepted in Muslim faith, but in Christianity it's deemed a sin. Guillotines in France, blood fights in Rome, and cannibalism in tribal cultures are all examples of how our definition of morality varies depending on our cultural environment and our individual experiences. Author Jesse Prince argues that in no way can morality be an objective subject because there's no standard method to judge the experiences of one person to those of another and deem one as having a superior moral compass. Philosophers since the time of Plato have all tried to give different definitions to what moral leadership looks like, but they all have their own flaws. Some emphasize the greater good for a community, but not all of the philosophers can define what the greater good always entails. Others, like Confucian philosophy, emphasizes the protection of virtues like propriety and fidelity, but all cultures do not share the same virtues, nor do they express them in the same manner. Now, Stanford University recognizes the utilitarian approach as one of the most commonly known and used of the philosophies, stating that what is done for the greatest good is what is most morally correct. But this leads to a huge problem. In 1941, a man that we all know as Hitler gave a speech, arguing that his actions were to, quote, protect all of Europe and therefore the salvation of everyone. By philosophers' standards of utilitarianist, wouldn't Hitler be considered a moral leader? It's issues like these that are cause for reevaluation of how we define morality in a leader and what we expect of them. Now, history has been filled with morally questionable leaders. George Washington stands as the father of American freedom, but yet he denied freedom to his African American slaves. Alexander the Great is one of Rome's strongest militants, but he conquered through endless bloodletting. And of course, President Donald Trump is the president of the free world, but he has been accused of sexual misconduct. Fidel Castro is one of the best examples of a man whose legacy is defined by controversy. Revolutionaries remember him for his dedication to social services like free education and healthcare. But others believe that his legacy is tarnished by his oppression of political freedoms and censorship of the media. Now, Fidel Castro is another prime example of why morality cannot be used to judge a leader, because our personal experiences and our feelings override our reasoning. Instead, we should be asking harder hit questions, like how did the leader get to the point of corruptness, and why do their followers resonate with such immoral ideas? In no way do I expect to cover a topic that has puzzled philosophers for thousands of years, but these are important ideas to consider. As students, teachers, citizens, and parents, morals not only define how we see other people, but how they see us in return. Morality is only a part of a leader's legacy, and the rest is up to our own judgment. So I ask you to ask yourselves, how and why do you have certain values, and why does someone else not hold those same values? I ask you as upcoming leaders to ask yourselves, why and how do you want to be remembered? Thank you.
This chapter discusses the ethical environment of organizations and the process of creating and maintaining this environment, the necessity for moral leadership within the organization, and how it affects the overall morality of the organization, how participating in moral integrity influences the organization through behavior modeling. Ethics is an important part of the work culture. In any organization, it can drastically change the way the entire company operates, from how the staff treat each other and clients to how and to who the company does business with. Without a proper ethical environment and persons willing to work to upkeep it, the organization will have no values or ethical behavior, and this can tarnish their reputation or even lead to the organization's collapse. Next slide. There are 4 ethical decision-making models and principles that are necessary to advance the ethical standards in an organization. Critical thinking skills. This is a person's ability to analyze the problem they are facing and actively try to find solutions to the problem instead of leaving it and hoping someone else fixes the problem for them. A high degree of integrity. When thinking up solutions, you don't try to take the easiest solution, especially if they go against your values and beliefs and are fundamentally wrong. The ability to see situations from others' perspective. Having consideration for your peers and co-workers when finding a solution, try to work with them and not against them. And personal motivation. In order to upkeep your values, you have to believe they are the right thing to do and stick to them no matter what. Next. Moral change. Criticism. When making a moral change within an organization, members may protest and criticize the change. When making a change in any capacity, people are going to push back because they believe either they don't like the change of the status quo, any change to the environment that they were accustomed to. The criticism may not even be relevant to the problem, but simply their fear of what they don't know. As the saying goes, better the devil you know. Leadership process. This leads to the second point, leadership process. When making change, the entire organization should be involved in the change. Everyone should have an invested part to play in facilitating the new change. This helps with group cohesion and allow teams work to be established. So when it comes to problem solving as the third point, identifying the problem refers to everyone having an active hand in fixing the problem. In every decision and change a leader makes for the overall benefit of the organization and the staff, they must use these 5 components: purposefulness, inclusion, empowerment, ethical behavior, and process orientation. Leaders must consider everyone's viewpoint and use their unique experiences to make the most logical and ethical decision. These 5 values leaders must adhere to in order to encourage inclusivity and cohesion among its members. Bad leadership. Bad leadership can be can be divided into two categories: ineffective or unethical. Ineffective leaders can be good people with good morals and values. They have the best in mind for the organization, but not the means or the methods to successfully reach their desired goals. While on a personal level, this is a minor issue, on an organizational level, it is more conducive to have a leader that is both capable and ethical in a decision-making position. Whereas an unethical leader can lead to a whole array of issues for the company, regardless of if they are capable of reaching their desired goals. These individuals are more likely to use shortcuts and underhanded methods to achieve their goals quickly. This can lead to problems later on, as shortcuts used can have negative influences on the organization's future. Next. Next. Hello? I'm not seeing the slide change. Can anybody see if the slide changed? I don't know if it's on my side as a problem.
I'm not seeing it changing either.
Theo, you got you this slide problem?
Reach out to Theophilus, see if he may have lost connectivity.
Sure.
I'm here.
All right, go back to your slide. It wasn't changing when this girl needed it. Go back to your PowerPoint.
Coincidence?
You're on slide
So
7.
Yeah. Can you see it?
So we're seeing it, Franklin, but it's changing very slowly. And I think you're the wrong slide for where you all are at this point in time. We're just dealing with ineffective and bad leaders. So I don't know. Right. So that was the last slide we were dealing with. Jenny, what slide do you want to be in?
We should be on example of toxic leaders.
Right, I think you're on the right page now.
Right. Here are some examples. Here are some examples of toxic leaders. Toxic leaders are persons who leave their followers worse off than they found them, violate basic standards of human rights of their own supporters, knowingly feed their followers illusions to enhance their own power and impair independent thinking, mislead followers through deliberate untruths and misdiagnosis of issues and problems, enormous egos that blind them to their own shortcomings, and cowardice that leads to the shirking from difficult choices. These persons are capable of creating an absolutely chaotic environment within the organization if left unchecked. If these leaders are being supported by either their superiors or their supporters, it can lead to not only a toxic working environment, but also bad business decisions within the organization as a whole. Rewards and recognition. An organization that rewards its workers for sustaining an ethical environment teaches others what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior within the organization and is a powerful way to promote ethical behavior. When trying to change an environment to something that is more conducive and desirable, rewarding those who exhibit the right behavior can encourage other employees to follow the lead. All it takes is one person to stand up for their ethical moral to create a chain reaction amongst the workers. Conversely, unethical behavior should be oppositely addressed. Some cultures prefer to use public humiliation as punishment, although not condoned in other countries. Members should be made aware of the consequences of such behavior. There will always be individuals that believe they are above the rules or that it does not affect them. If punishments aren't put in place to discourage this type of behavior, it is the same as saying it's okay for it to occur. Despite this, individuals still have the right to confidentiality under the principle of doing no harm when addressing violation of rules or standards. But wrong actions should still be discouraged to ensure they are not repeated. Unethical behavior. Some organizations have no positive ethical environment as both leaders and members are not committed to a moral orientation. These organizations may encourage unethical behavior in the name of improvement. Leaders who lack courage or moral orientation in their dealings with people, money, law, policies, and other matters set a climate in the organization that rewards unscrupulous behavior. This can lead to the deteriorating moral values of those who witness these actions. I think being ethical is absolutely necessary when talking about leadership. You have to have some moral code from which your ideals come. If you act unethical in any way, you are hurting not only yourself, but those who look up to you. In the real world, not everyone operates in an ethical manner, but I truly believe that those who do end up being the winner in the long run. Tim Slaughter said this, Vice President of Leadership Development. Melissa, I'm probably going to butcher this, Schlotera says, integrity is connected with respect. Without integrity, you cannot gain the respect of your fellow members. Without that respect, organizational goals are not attained. The integrity of leaders also reflects the integrity of the organization and its members. Because the leaders are the most visible people in the organization, their actions and values reflect on all of those who are involved. Next. Clashes in value. Individuals may face clashes in values with their organization if their moral integrity and values clash with the company's standard. This difficult decision offers only three choices. 1. Ignore or put up with the situation. If you choose to leave the situation as is, you are passively contributing to any immoral behavior around you. Even if you are not actively participating, you become part of the problem. 2. Addressing the situation and work to change the organization's climate into an ethical nature. There are always risks when you try to change an environment that is already established in the organization. You could risk becoming a pariah among your peers or even a target for the higher ups who perceive your actions as a threat. Or 3, leave the organization. If you see that you can no longer handle the environment, it is sometimes best to remove yourself from the situation, even if it may not be the most ideal solution. Ethically fit. An individual needs to always be mindful in every situation they find themselves in, always trying to look for the best outcome that does not violate their moral ethics. This mindset requires practice. No one is born capable of figuring out solutions to difficult situations at the drop of a hat. So the more experience someone has, even mental experience, allows them the ability to better analyze and resolve issues that may come their way. Moral purpose as an act of courage. Individuals must be willing and able to have personal courage to stand up for their core values and ethical obligations. Greg Levoy, former Cincinnati Enquirer, says, "To tell if a stone is true, you bang on it with a hammer. A dull tone indicates a fault. The stone will crack when you work on it, but a clearing, one that hangs in the air, means the stone is true. It has integrity. It will hold up under repeated blows." To simplify, a person with integrity can withstand the harsh reality of their circumstances and stand by their morals, whereas a person without integrity is more likely to cave under any external pressure and give in to those around them. Ethical leaders can be found in many everyday positions, not only in high ones. A person does not have to be in a high affluent position to be an ethical leader. They can be an everyday individual. A person modeling good leadership could be a local business owner, faculty or administration members, religious leaders from your community, committed neighbors, even your peer or family members, and many others. The only requirement is to be an upstanding person with integrity and a motivation to encourage others to live by good morals and values. Moral courage. The quality that enables one to stand up to ethical challenges and not waver in your moral and ethical beliefs. Moral courage can be viewed as the intersection of three conceptual fields: principles, danger, and endurance. Having awareness of danger, a willingness to endure some type of hardship, is key to possessing moral courage. One example of this is Nelson Mandela, who endured 18 years of prison for his opposition of apartheid in South Africa. Despite this, he still fought for what he believed was right, and in the end was rewarded for his conviction when apartheid was repealed in the 1990s. There are many assumptions about good leadership, effective and ethical. Lucas and Danello propose 8 assumptions about ethical leadership, which are central themes in the study of practice of ethical leadership. They are, next slide. Ethics is the heart of leadership. Good leadership means leadership that is effective, that the goals were achieved, and that follows a sound and ethical process. The means to do justify the ends when leading with integrity. 2, all leadership is value-driven. We need to reframe leadership so that it represents values that reflect good, ethical leadership. Everyone comes in with their own notions of right and wrong, and everything from an organization to a community is driven by people's collective values. 3, personal values that intersect with organizational values. How you lead will be heavily influenced by your personal values. A person should examine and reflect on what they believe is right and wrong and use this as a basis for their leadership. 4, ethical leadership can be learned. Ethically learning is a trial and error process that involves experience, reflection, conceptualization, and application that eventually will sharpen your ability to analyze and reflect on the fairness of any given situation. 5, ethical leadership involves a connection between ethical thought and action. Linking moral reasoning with values and action is imperative in leadership. Analyzing theories is as important as applying them to real-life situations. 6, character development is an essential ingredient of ethical leadership. Leaders need to have consistency between their values and actions. In other words, they need to be able to walk their talk and lead by example, not by word. 7. Ethical leadership is a shared process. The responsibility to be ethical is not the responsibility of one person, but it is up to every member of the organization to take up the mantle of doing the right thing. And 8, everything we do teaches. Be a role model. People learn from watching others. Your actions may influence someone to do better and may even cause a chain reaction of ethical behavior. Next. Leading with moral purpose calls for a person to examine what they believe is ethical and what is unethical, what is good leadership and what is bad leadership, what is toxic behavior versus non-toxic behavior traits, and how far you as an individual are willing to go to advance your core values and do the right thing in the name of achieving justice and fairness. Next. Next slide.
This one, Rena?
See, you can change it to the next slide.
Yes, I have.
It's still showing the, oh, no, this isn't it.
This one?
No, this isn't it. The slide right after leading with moral purpose.
This one?
You're too far down. You have to go up some slides.
This was the last one.
So I don't know about me, but I'm not seeing the slides shifting. All right, so this slide here is the last one you presented. So I guess it should be the next slide you're moving to.
Right, is the one right after this.
I think this is it.
Right. I believe I read this one. I read this one already. It was the slide right after this one. Right, here we go. Joanna Calderulo says, Some of the values that I try to live by are respect and responsibility. When it comes to respect, I believe that you should respect everyone no matter what. Our wants or needs are no more important than anyone else's. Also, responsibility is a major ethical value that I live by. I take seriously everything that I get involved with. I put my heart into it all, and I take responsibility for everything that comes my way. One of the sayings that she grew up with is that you must walk your talk. If you're going to say you're going to do it, then you better take action and do it. I think it's very important to stick and live by your ethical values. An active leader has to have a clear message about his or her ethical views and use these to lead others. With this view of what they plan on striving for, the true leadership will shine. Next, cultural assumptions. Ethics exist in a cultural context. They are culturally bound or culturally specific. There is no universal agreement on what behaviors or practices are considered appropriate, legal, ethical, or moral across cultures. Morality is a very fluid and varied concept when studied at a universal point of view. Cultures have drastically different views of what is the correct ethical action, even if the ethical thought is, is the same. Example, in some communities around the world, honor killing is considered ethical. This is where a male family member may take it upon themselves to murder a female family member who they believe brought shame and dishonor upon the family's reputation. Some communities justify and even encourage honor killings and see the family not committing the act as cowardly and may begin to ostracize the entire family. Next. Next slide. Ethics. Ethics are temporal in nature. They are subject to shift with the change in laws or legal norms. What some may consider to be ethical may not be the same for others. Laws such as Jim Crow were considered ethical and legal until the 1960s, but is now considered illegal, immoral, and unethical by today's standards. Laws and regulations influence the changing nature of ethical practices and behaviors, especially in the business world. For those who don't know what Jim Crow laws were, they were basically segregation laws in America, where there were separate facilities for Black people and white people to use. They couldn't use the same water fountains, the same bathrooms, and they were treated as lesser sub-citizens instead of equal citizens with equal rights. Next slide. Contrarily, Kinnaman suggests that there are universal moral values. Kanongo and Mendans assert that morally good acts are based on universal moral laws that are fundamental values such as truth, goodness, beauty, courage and justice that are found in all cultures, though cultures may differ on the application of these values. For example, one company may see courage as a show of physical strength, someone defeating a seemingly stronger opponent, or simply the act of overcoming and confronting a mental trauma and healing from the experience. Kidderman identifies 8 common values while interviewing 24 leaders from 60 different countries. These were love, truthfulness, fairness, freedom, unity, tolerance, responsibility, and respect for life. Seligman also identified 6 virtues common to more than 200 religions and philosophical traditions. Wisdom and knowledge, courage, love and humanity, justice, temperance, and spirituality and transcendence. This is to say that despite the difference in cultural action, the basis and reasoning behind these acts usually stems from the same moral values, simply expressed in various ways. Moral concepts. Anthropolo- Anthropological studies have documented different moral views and practices interculturally and intraculturally. Right or wrong, justice or injustice are dictated by the values of a given culture. Comparing moral concepts, even intraculturally, is futile. What is socially practiced in one culture may be repudiated in another. This begs the question, is there no moral consensus in international affairs, as the ethics of persons within the same country may differ, much like those amongst various countries? This can be seen in American culture, where Islamic women who wear the hijab can be seen as oppressed victims of sexism, whereas the Muslim women see it as a symbol of worship and a show of humility. Next, cultural tolerance. Cultural tolerance recognizes the differences in practice without the purpose of imposing or changing it to suit a particular cultural belief. A person can understand that despite the differences in their culture to someone else's, they have no right to try or impose or force someone to change or adapt their culture to more suit their own. Cultural relativism is specific is relative to a specific culture and society. The aim in comparing cultures is to understand rather than judge. This shows that any culture should be understood relative to their specific cultural context and not by outside beliefs. For examples, for example, leaders of multinational business organizations must follow the local laws, norms, or mores and practices associated with the country in which they are conducting business. An example of this could be in some Muslim countries in the Middle East, alcohol is not sold in any form. All businesses within the country do not have any sort of alcohol culture around them. And any business that wishes to do business in those countries must also follow these moral codes. Next, corruption. Corruption is another form of cultural and unethical behavior that appears in varying degrees, from parent bribing underpaid teachers to large amount of public funds wasting or being stolen by public officials. Persons asked to rate the sectors in their respective countries responded that political parties were perceived as the most affected, followed by parliament or legislature, the police, the legal system, and the judiciary. This is caused when unethical behavior is culturally accepted at a governmental level. The persons in charge of the country condone and encourage this behavior, allowing it to trickle down and affect the general populace, leading to the unethical decline of an entire country.
Let's take a look at ethical leadership. Although there's been an interest in ethics for thousands of years, very little theoretical research exists on the nature of leadership ethics. Ethical theory provides a set of principles that guide leaders in making decisions about how to act and how to morally dissent. In Western tradition, ethical theories typically are divided into two kinds: theories about conduct and theories about character. Theories about conduct emphasize the consequences of leader behaviors or the rules that govern their behavior. Virtue based theories focus on the character of leaders, and they stress qualities such as courage, honesty, fairness, and fidelity. Ethics plays a central role in the leadership process. Because leadership involves influence and leaders often have more power than followers, they have an enormous ethical responsibility for how they affect their people. The theme common to all authors in ethical leadership is the ethic of caring, which pays attention to followers' needs and the importance of the leader-follower relationship. It's the duty of leaders to treat others with respect, to listen to them closely, and be tolerant of opposing points of view. Ethical leaders serve others by being altruistic, placing others' welfare ahead of their own in an effort to contribute to the common good. Justice requires that leaders place fairness at the center of their decision making, including the challenging task of being fair to the individual while simultaneously being fair to the common interest of the community. Research on ethics and leadership has several strengths. At the time when the public is demanding higher levels of moral responsibility from its leaders, this research provides some direction in how to think about ethical leadership and a practice of it. In addition, this research reminds us that leadership is a moral process. Scholars should include ethics as an integral part of leadership study and research. Third, this area of research describes basic principles that we can use while developing real world ethical leadership. On the negative side, the research in this area of ethical leadership is still in the early stages of development. Few studies have been done that directly address the nature of ethical leadership. As a result, the theoretical formations of the process remain tentative. Second, this area of research relies on writings of a few individuals whose work has primarily been descriptive and anecdotal. As a result, the development of theory on leadership ethics lacks the traditional empirical support that usually accompanies theories of human behavior. Despite these weaknesses, the field of ethical leadership is wide open for future research. There remains a strong need for research that can advance our understanding of the role of ethics in the leadership process.
So from continuing from my colleague's standpoint, there, as you mentioned before, there's some theories in ethical leaderships. As you know, some historical theories are Aristotle, Plato, and Aristocrates. And in the 18th and 19th century, there was theories such as Immanuel Kant and John Stewart. James McGregor Bond's theory, he believed that leaders and followers raise one another to high levels of morality and motivation. And as mentioned before, transformational leadership involves persuasion. That is, leaders must be able to persuade their followers to be good and moral citizens, and even in business and in life. So, from our discussion, there are some values of being a transformational leaders. They are peace, fairness, justice, liberty, and equal opportunity. In terms of peace, leaders must show that there shouldn't be any conflict among members or even among supporters in their camp or even in their business and when they work with their way of life. Secondly, fairness. Leaders must strive to be objective in their dealings with other members and to always be on the right track. Justice must be served at all costs. It shouldn't be hidden, it shouldn't be blind. Liberty and equal opportunity. Equal opportunity, that is, everybody must have a fair chance in an organization, whether they're at the low level or at the top level. The leader's fundamental act is to induce people to be aware or conscious of what they feel, to feel their true needs so strongly, to define their values so meaningfully that they can move to purposeful action. In terms, you must actually know where you are to where you're going. And it must be meaningful and you must have purpose when, as a leader in any organization. Another aspect is symbiotic relationship as an interaction of power and shared values. It is the power of a person to become a leader armed with principles and rising above self-interest normally conceive that a person with power and may ultimately transform both leaders and followers who jointly adhere to moral and to end values. As we said, as quoted by James, by Mr. Bourne in 1978. So let's discuss some characteristics of moral leaders. One, they must be courageous, confront reality even if it is painful, in terms of, because as you know, in our modern times, there's not enough leaders who are courageous to see a negative and say it's a negative. Some leaders now actually see negative and still try to be positive, to support us to think in a positive light. As mentioned before, they must be self-driven, have healthy egos to withstand peer pressure. Fourthly, they must possess positive self-esteem. You can have a leader that possesses a negative self-esteem about itself and their others. And lastly, value-driven. They must actually do what is right and what is meaningful in the eyes of their co-workers, population of citizens in a country as leaders who have a moral standing. Modeling a moral purpose in terms of everyone strive to be a mentor. We actually look at people as who have high moral standards. So morals mentors plays a critical role if members can admire a person with others in a positive way. For example, in the Caribbean, we argue have been Kate Rowley, Kamala Joe Biden. All these we look at people as who have high moral standards and try to be them in the near future. So another thing is that social learning traits as banderas that learning from others can have a positive and negative effect on others. If you look at which way there's unethical and ethical. And one other thing is there moral talk. Moral talk or direct leadership explores ethical issues and organization. It helps create and sustain ethical environment. So in other words, every now and then it's good to have leaders come and talk to you about what is equally right and wrong, so everybody could be on the same footing to carry an organization forward in terms of leadership from a leadership standpoint. So let's look at some ethical principles and standards. Aristotle ethical principles have been adopted by scholars to guide physicians, psychologists, and counselors in the helping of professions like Bucamp and Chellis proposed 5 principles of biomedical ethics, which were later adopted by Karen Storm Kitchener for the counseling psychology field. These principles include respecting autonomy, doing no harm, benefiting others, being just, and being faithful. Using these principles as a critical evaluative approach allows leaders and members to eliminate their ordinary moral judgment and redefine the basis of their actions. They can be applied in leadership and organizational settings to determine the correct course of action and have a bearing on how decisions will affect others. Professional associations have code of ethics that are standards used to guide professions' decision-making and action. The Center for Study of Ethics in the professions have gathered over 850 codes of ethics for various professions, including law, government, engineering, healthcare, sports, fraternal, social, and media codes can protect professionals from pressure that could lead to questionable conduct and a unifying document of common values and ethics associated with any professions. Respecting autonomy, providing leaders and members with freedom of choice, allowing individuals to freely develop their values, respecting the rights of others to act independently, doing no harm on non-malfeasance, including preventing an environment free from harm to others, both psychological and physical, benefiting others, promoting the interests of the organization above personal interests and self-gain, being just or justice and treating people fairly and equally, traits of Aristotle's work and ethics, being faithful or fidelity, keeping promises, being faithful and loyal to the group organizations. These ethical decisions and decision-making models can reach a home, can reach a more informed and carefully analyzed decision before taking any action. However, they alone are not necessarily resolved for every dilemma and encountered. So let's use some practical application. In the text, what I discussed is the concept of ethical decision making and its importance in navigating dilemmas. So, as you can see, dilemmas happen in everyday life, but we of our own must have to know when to actually be morally correct in going them. So another example, the president of a club's young Republicans or young Republican is faced with a moral dilemma, a planned scheme to steal all campus materials before students receive them. So in other words, these are it's unethical in any club of stealing and other stuff, which is not morally right or morally wrong. Ethical decision-making models, the relationship leadership models emphasize inclusive and process-oriented leadership, aiming to address ethical dilemmas for the common good. Leaders and participants must be reflective, challenging, caring, purposeful, and consultative when working through ethical issues. Several approaches can be used to resolve ethical dilemmas, such as professional codes of conduct, sexual harassment, non-discriminative policies, fraternity and sororities rituals. Example, we have exams coming up soon, and during exams, COSTA send out code of conduct for how COSTA students do exams in terms of plagiarism and stuff. All these are code of ethics from organizational standpoint. Thank you. So can you hear me?
Yes, is this the end?
Yes, it is the end.
Of the entire presentation?
Yes, it is.
All right, okay. I'm gonna stop recording.